Aha, you're right. There it is.
All right. See people joining. Hi, everybody. And Stuart, I can keep an eye on the Q&A as well as
Oh,
we
that would be
go.
great. Thank you so much. It's funny because I see a lot of participants, but it's just you and me up on the screen. Is this how professional webinars go? We don't see who's okay. I'm so used to classes. Should I start talking then, or else people will start to will start to leave Zoom. So hi everybody, I'm Stuart Gazes. I teach in the physics department. I'm the undergraduate program chair in physics. And as such, I oversee the physics major. And what I'd like to do is to welcome you to Chicago, one and all, uh, and pass along some information that I think will be some time-sensitive information, but also open the floor to any questions you might have, either of immediate need or down the road a bit. And let me also then introduce the co-host from the college, Carrie Espinoza. Carrie, hi.
Hi, everyone. Some of you may have met me yesterday on the math webinar. Carrie Espinosa, I'm the director of the College Academic and Student Services Office, which oversees the technical process of posting your placement results, essentially. You may meet me for other reasons too, but that's one of the services that we take care of.
Um, I think I have a very short PowerPoint presentation. I'm not even sure it deserves to be called a presentation, but let me see if I can share this with people. Um, so I think I do this, and I do this, and I share, and hopefully people can see physics info session. So you are here. My name, oh, wait a minute, July 7th. Am I late? Put the wrong date on it, sorry. Um, so I'm Stuart Gazes, and my email address is gazes@uchicago.edu. And please, if you have any questions that you want to raise after this info session is over, pretty much any time you want to just talk with me about something, the email address is there for you to use. We can always, from the email address, if email doesn't work so well, we'll set up a time to meet or talk over Zoom. Um, now, one of the things that I'm sure many of you are thinking about is physics placement. And so physics placement, there should be one of two placements, actually one of three placements that you might have gotten. You might have gotten a Physics 131 placement. That requires getting placed into Math 151 or higher. That's because Physics 131 is calculus-based physics. So 151 or higher, you should have on your placement results Physics 131. If you didn't get placed into Math 151 or higher, if, for example, you got placed into Math 131, you will need to complete the Math 130 sequence before you can take calculus-based physics. So if you take Math 130s this year, you can take physics next year, and the requirements for the physics major can be done in 3 years. We make it a point to make this possible. So even if you don't start taking intro physics until next year, you're still good to go for a physics major. Physics 141 placement, well, That's the honors version of 131. So mechanics versus honors mechanics. And we make placement into 141 in two different ways. First, there's the automated way, otherwise known as the mindless way, where we look at AP scores or AB scores. And if the scores are high enough, we just place you in 141. You don't have to take 141. You can take 131 if you want, but we highly recommend that students who have 141 placement take 141. Two things I hate to see. I hate to see is students being bored and students being lost. And the idea behind the placement is to have you take a physics course that will not bore you, that will challenge you, but that will not make your life miserable. So we look at what we know about your background, and we make placement to make that all happen. You can be a physics major, whether you take physics 130s or physics 140s, despite what some people may tell you. Don't pay any attention to those people. Um, either 131 or 141 is a path to the physics major. To me, it's what's important is not how you start, it's where you finish. And we've had a lot of people starting in physics 130s who end up with a physics degree. In fact, if I look at the students who graduated um, in June, and I look to see where they came from, there were more people who took the physics 130s than took the physics 140s. It was close. There were actually more people coming from the non-honors sequence than from the honors sequence. Uh, it's also true that there are many more people taking non-honors than honors, so that could also be that's going to have a say in how many people get physics degrees. But the point is, you can definitely be a physics major with 131 placement. If you don't have placement via the um, the mindless automated approach with these scores, then come talk to me. Or, well, I say talk to, send me an email and tell me what is on your mind. If you want to discuss your placement, if you were placed into 131 but think you should be in 141, send me an email. If you were placed in the 141 but think that that's too much and you should be in 131, well, you don't need permission to take 131 with 141 placement. But if you're not sure which one to take, send me an email. I'd like to be able to talk with you about it. And separate from the question of placement, it's also possible to get credit for one of the intro physics courses via exam. So I want to emphasize that these exams, which are accreditation exams, will give you credit for 121 or 141. These are not placement tests. So if you pass, for example, the physics 141 test, you have credit for 141. You can take another course in place of it, or take the next course in the sequence. These accreditation exams, whether it's 121 or 141, these accreditation exams will test your knowledge of mechanics. The honors sequence will be a harder test than 121. We teach that the 140 sequence is honors physics. The 131 sequence is, so here it is over here, 130s or 140s. They're both calculus based, but 140s is more heavily calculus based than 130s. We assume with 130s that you are perhaps still in the process of acquiring your calculus skills, but that you've been exposed to differentiation and integration. With the 140s, we are assuming that you are solid in single variable calculus. Um, there is a vicious rumor going around, this happens every year, uh, where students hear that you have to know multivariable calculus to take honors physics 141. Not true. We don't assume you know multivariable. We assume you are very comfortable with variable calculus and we'll teach you multivariable, or at least the multivariable that you need. So single variable calculus, we expect you to have a foundation that we can build on. But if you haven't seen multivariable yet, as far as I'm concerned, you're join the club. Well, okay, I've seen multivariable, but among the students, you don't have to have seen multivariable to take honors physics. So 121, the 120 sequence is a somewhat different sequence. It is calculus-based, but not very heavily. It is a sequence for bio majors and pre-health majors. So if people planning to go on to do the health sciences, typically those programs, medical school, for example, requires physics, and they will accept the 120 sequence. For physics and chemistry also, I believe, the 120 sequence won't work. You'd have to take either the 130s or 140 sequence. So if you are wondering which exam should I take, first let me mention that the exams will be remote, and they'll be offered on September 4th, which is a Thursday. And you'll get more information from the college about how to register for the test. You can only take which one? I'm sorry, you can only take one. So which one? And it depends on what you're thinking about doing. If you are thinking about majoring in the physical sciences, so physics, chemistry, molecular engineering, any physical science course, they will want you to take the 130s or higher, not the 120s. Unless I tell you 120s is okay, they want 130s or higher. So taking this exam, 121 accreditation exam, may not help you at all. You might get credit for 121, but your major may not accept 121. However, physical science majors can always use 141 credit. You'll get credit for the first quarter of honors physics, which will also satisfy a 131 requirement. And it sounds like you should then take 141 because it'll help you with more majors. However, this exam is harder than 121. So the 121 exam may not help you, in which case don't bother with it. But the 141 exam will be a harder test than 121, which then raises the question, what kind of preparation do I need for these two tests? Well, 121 will test your knowledge of mechanics roughly at the level of AP Physics C mechanics. If you had a 5 on AP Physics C mechanics, you have background to take the 121 accreditation test. But here's the thing. If you got a 5 on AP Physics C mechanics, you already have 121 credit. So there's no benefit to taking the 121 accreditation test. You could take the 121 accreditation test if your planned major requires 121, and if you think you know the material in 121 but haven't gotten placement, perhaps because you haven't had AP or IB scores that would give you placement. If so, we should talk about your placement if you think you should be in 141.
Stuart, can I interject
Yeah.
with a question on that?
Oh, yes.
So if I were a student who maybe took the AP class, but I never took the formal exam,
Hmm.
but I did well in the class,
Yes.
this might be a good pathway for me.
Yes. Yes. Um, if you don't, so yeah, absolutely. If you didn't take the exam, but you took the course, since we don't know what score you would have gotten on the AP exam if you didn't take it, then it becomes an educated guess about how much you know. Well, your educated guess about how much you know, and our not so educated guess, because we'll have you take the exam, and if you get credit for it, then if you pass the exam, you have credit for 121. So you get credit for Physics 121 either with a 5 on AP Physics C Mechanics or by passing this exam. 141 being the honors sequence, I'll tell you the students who are in Physics 141. They're physical science majors. They may be thinking of a physics major, although many non-physics majors will take 141. And they pretty much all have either a 4 or 5 in AP Physics, C Mechanics, or have had the equivalent. So a 5 on AP Physics C doesn't mean you know the material of 141. It means we think you can learn the material in 141 based on your background. But if you think you can pass the 141 accreditation test, that's going to require knowledge beyond what an AP Physics C course would be. Some people who pass the 141 accreditation test have perhaps have college courses. Didn't get transfer credit, but they've had college courses, or they had an AP teacher who went way beyond the AP Physics C syllabus. Um, so hopefully that's enough information for you to figure out which one of these tests to take. Which one of these tests will be useful. As I say, if you want to be a physical science major, 120, well, I should be careful. Chemistry, physics, molecular engineering will not accept physics 120s. Some physical science majors, I think computer science and maybe one or two others will accept physics 120s to satisfy the physics requirement. So if you know your major will accept 121, then taking the 121 exam to see if you get credit for it makes sense. Otherwise, you'll want to take the 141 exam or not take an accreditation test at all and just start in physics 141 or 131, depending on your placement. And information about when and where, well, when will be September 4th in the morning. Where will be online, and the college will pass along to you information about what if you'll need to send information to me. It's a very simple process. You just email me with your name, your email address, which exam you want to take, and one or two other things that you'll be asked to pass along to me. And then you'll be enrolled in a Canvas course called Physics Accreditation Exam, and then you're good to go. Well, yeah, before I go on the questions, any questions about this stuff or this stuff?
Stuart, there's one about the accreditation exam. So some of the
Hmm.
students are participating in like pre-orientation activities or different things that are happening on that date. If somebody has a
Hmm.
conflict, how do you want them to address that? Should they reach out to you?
They should reach out to me, and we'll see if we can resolve the conflict. I um, it may be that the conflict um, goes away when we investigated further, but the hope was that the morning of September 4th would not result in a conflict with some orientation event. I'm sorry, it's not orientation. It's a few weeks before orientation. So, so definitely, if you have a conflict, send me an email, tell me what the conflict is, and we will see if we can figure out what to do. And if there's a problem with time zones, for example, if you're in a distant time zone and the time that we are offering the accreditation exam, if it ends up being a problem, I can make an arrangement for another time that same day. Other
There's
questions?
a few others about the accreditation exams.
Mm-hmm.
How, like, how does one prepare for the accreditation exams? Is there something in
Mm-hmm.
particular they should do beforehand?
So in both cases, 121 or 141, you should review what you learned about mechanics. It doesn't mean you should learn mechanics because, well, that's going to be what the courses do for you, is help you to learn it. But if you already have knowledge in mechanics, review that knowledge. Um, Typically, with 141, it's not just reviewing your physics knowledge, but maybe also your math knowledge, because the problems on the 141 accreditation test will be more mathematical in nature than in the 121 exam. But reviewing the material you've already learned, uh, put another way, well, okay. One year, many years ago, students were told, don't study for the placement tests or accreditation tests. You know what happens if you don't study? You forget everything. So the idea there is review stuff. We want you to remind yourself of what you've learned, just like you would be able to remind yourself of what you learned if you took the course. So a little bit of review, but no heavy lifting, no intense studying. We want to see whether what you already have learned means that you wouldn't benefit from taking this one of these two physics courses. We don't want to waste your time. We don't want you to be bored. So if you demonstrate that you know this material based on your previous coursework, or maybe you read a lot, however you acquire that knowledge, if you know the material in 121 or 141, then we just want to give you credit for it and have you move on to the next step.
Stuart, there's another question from early on that someone submitted. So I wonder if we can change topics just slightly.
Sure.
Um, and I'm not sure how you would respond to this one. How should I pick between a math versus a physics major?
hmm Good question. If you are thinking of a physics major, you would probably be taking a math course and a physics course. So one thought would be take a math and a physics course and leave your options open. Now, it may be that depending on whether you want to be a math or a physics major, that may affect what math course you take, in which case a conversation with me or a conversation with someone in the math department may be helpful. For example, physics majors take either an applied math sequence, Math 180s, or an analysis sequence. They do different things, but either one of them works for the physics major. However, the applied math sequence will not work for the math major, whereas analysis would. So if you're thinking of physics or math and trying to choose between Math 180s or Math 203 and higher, analysis will keep both options open. Applied math, 180 sequence, will keep the physics major open. The math major is, well, it's still a possibility, except you'll have to take analysis the following year. Um, you could take analysis and the 180s, but not many people do that. That's very uncommon and typically isn't necessary. If you're not sure if it's a choice between math 180s or analysis, um, as I say, talk to me, talk to somebody in math. But for me, the most important thing is not prematurely closing off options. And when I say that, it's not that the physics would be closed off as an option, because we'll accept 180s or analysis. Math will only accept analysis, not the 180s, and so um, that may affect what you do for your math courses in your first year. Ooh, Carrie, I think I've lost you. Uh-oh. But if I've lost Carrie, how will I know what questions people have? Um, oh, that's a problem. Um, hmm. Oh, interesting. I can see the questions too. Forgot about that. Let's see. Okay. So, question about whether to take math 180s or analysis. If you're not planning to major in math, well, okay. If you want to either major in math or take more advanced math courses, either one will require that you take analysis. So analysis is something you would take for more advanced math courses, certainly for a math major. But if it's just a physics major, you got a choice. How do you make that choice? What do you think you'd like to learn about? Math tools or pure math? That would be essentially how I would between analysis or math 180s. So in other words, it's a matter of taste. You might prefer one over the other. Either one will work for the physics major. And Carrie, I just realized I can see the questions. So do you want to do you want to do you want but do you want to pick the questions and uh, decide which ones are worth taking up first?
Yeah, I've been answering a few that are like really kind of like specific to individual
Ah,
cases.
hmm.
And I've just been typing those out, but kind of leaving the rest for us to talk about.
Okay.
Here's a good one, and I showed this a little bit yesterday for
Hmm.
the math webinar for those that were there. But in the college catalog, you'll be able to see more information about what physics courses can be used for the core requirement. A lot of what we're talking about here are the placement results, but there are also other physics courses for folks who may not want to take an ordinary like general physics or honors physics that will support their work in, let's say, the math major or the physics major, pre-health, things like that. So there are definitely in the catalog other physics courses for folks who are not going into a STEM field. If you actually, Stuart, want to stop sharing, I can pivot over to the catalog and show where to find
Sure.
that.
Of course. There you go. I've stopped sharing.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So, in the catalog, this is another different page, but under the core and physical sciences, you'll be able to see both sets of information. So what you might want to take if you are not going into a STEM field that requires a particular physics course, um, and what you would take as potential options if you were. The trick is to make sure that you're not just looking at this page, but that you're looking at under programs of study the different areas that you are most strongly interested in. So if I was going to be a physics major, I would want to go to the physics page, and then usually on any of these pages, there will be a quick link for summary of requirements. and that will take you to where you need to be. So for the BA in physics, I have to take one of these sets of courses in order to progress to the rest of the major. So 131 or 132, or sorry, 131 and 132, and then the alternative being 141 and 142. That will prep me for where I need to go when I start the major, which picks up with the third course in the sequence. So if you were going into, let's say, history, maybe not the best example. I don't see summary here. Let's try art history. Summary of requirements. You'll see it goes straight to the major, and that means that that particular major doesn't have any specific stipulations for how you fulfill the core requirements. So you can take your pick from what is listed for each core requirement. There were a couple questions, so just while I'm in here, there were a couple more questions about like AP credit, IB credit, A levels. You can find all of that on the examination credit page right here, AP, IB, and A levels.
Oh,
And
Carrie,
the
I think
instructions.
in the catalog, college catalog, if you look at the I guess curriculum where it discusses the various courses, for physical science core, they list what courses non-science majors can use to satisfy physical science core, and you'll see you won't see physics or chemistry, or you'll see physical science courses listed. So you can satisfy physical science core with physics and chemistry and whatever courses that the majors would take, but you can also satisfy it by taking courses for non-science majors.
Yeah, exactly. Some really interesting ones there too. Okay, so I'll stop sharing.
I want to take natural disasters or natural hazards. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, the chemistry of food and cooking is always one that I think sounds really interesting too. When it comes, Stuart, to questions about students who want to double major in something, and let's
Mhm.
say one major says to go down one path with math or physics classes, and then a different major says to go kind of down a different path, what would you
Mhm.
recommend to those students?
I would talk to people in both departments and make sure that they know what the other major is that you're thinking about so that they can advise you on what courses you would have to take to keep the physics major in play while at the same time making the other department's major happy. Usually that means two different options. You would maybe want to take the higher of the two options to keep both majors active. But sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes it really seems like they're asking you to take two different things. And if that's the case, I can at least talk about how to handle that for physics. Or put another way, I can tell people what physics would accept in place of the path we advocate. And the other major would do the same thing. They might say, well, we want you to take this course, but we'll accept this other course as well. And then perhaps then the conflict goes away for the double major. But often it does involve talking to people in both departments. I would be for physics, and maybe iterating a little bit to find out what will make everybody happy.
Stuart, this question, I'm not sure I know the answer to either, or if there's a recommendation you might have. Are there some sample problems online, or maybe like a sample course syllabus? Is there anything online that students would be able to look at to get more of like a preview of any of the courses?
Um, Trying to think. There are a few places one might go to, I'm not sure that I would just want to say that any of them are where you should go. Um, I would say send me an email. Now, having said that, that might open the floodgates. Um, Between the 130s and the 140s, the topics are the same. It's just the mathematical depth that you go into is different. So a course description may not really tell you that. It may mention that in physics 132 you study Maxwell's equations, and physics 142 you study Maxwell's equations. But in 142, the math that will be used will be more sophisticated. And that's something that's not so easy to convey just from a list of topics. But if you find that unsatisfying, and who would be satisfied with such a poor answer, send me an email. I'll see if I can I'll see if I can perhaps address the specific question that a student has about, is this topic in it? Is this topic not in it? What preparation do I need?
Yeah, this is a similar one. So for students who only require the 120 sequence for
Hmm.
their area of study, is there any advantage to taking the 130s or the 140s
If you take
despite
the
it
one,
not being required?
yes, if you take the 130s or 140s, you will have I think, a deeper understanding of physics. But also, if you want to take more physics courses beyond the first year courses, you can't do that unless you take physics 130s or 140s. Put another way, physics 120s is a terminal sequence. After you take physics 120s, you can't take more physics. 130s or 140s preps you for courses beyond that.
Looking to see if there's any that we haven't gotten to yet. Um,
Well, I see though, as far as the difficulty of the course, um, if it's a question of which one do I register for, I know that the college has this uh, outlook about what to do while you're in college, which is to take the course that will challenge you. Take the highest level of physics that you qualify for. So if you get physics 141 placement, you could take 131, but you'll be limiting then how much you'll learn. And with potentially being bored, which as I say, I hate. Being bored, or struggling, I hate either one. So I would say if you get physics 141 placement, it's because we think 141 will be a good fit for you. And if it turns out that, well, after a week or two, or even 3 weeks, if it looks like 141 is too much, you can drop down to 131. Very easy to do. Whereas you can't move up to 141. If 131 seems boring, you don't have you can only move up to 141 with permission from me, and you have to get that permission within a couple of weeks. one thing to keep in mind when you try to decide if a particular course is the right one for you based on sitting in on it, I've had students who, after a week of taking a course, tell me they want to move up from 131 to 141 because I've seen all this stuff already. Well, maybe the first week of 131 is review. It doesn't mean that by the time you get to the midpoint of the course, it's still going to be review. Chances are it won't. So going by the first week and extrapolating to what the rest of the course will be is dangerous. So if you don't know what the whole course is going to be like, how do you decide for yourself whether you should be in 141 or 131? Well, the placement will tell you whether 141 is a good place to be. You're not required to take it, but as I say, if you get 141 placement, we think that that will be a good match, a good fit for you. So what we are doing is we are using our knowledge of what lies ahead to tell you, well, this may seem okay now, but it's going to get a lot harder, and so you should start with this rather than that. It is possible if you take 131, it is possible with my approval to move up to 142. But what that approval will be based on is whether 131 ended up being pretty easy for you. The placement process it's an educated guess. And if the educated guess was wrong, if we think 131 is a good place to begin, but it turns out you could have handled 141, we don't want to compound the mistake by having you stay in the 130 sequence. If you do on 131 and want to move up to honors, with my permission, you can move into 142 then. And practically speaking, you wouldn't really have lost much. Um, it's not until you get to the E&M course where the two tracks start to become appreciably different in intensity.
Great. I think most of the questions that are sitting, you've answered out loud rather than me typing. So I think we're in pretty good shape here, but is now a good time to talk about students who maybe have late things coming in, late placement exams for math or late AP scores, late IB scores. So anyone who did send those things on time, AP and IB scores, or take the placement for math on time, you would have received results if you placed it into physics 131 and or 141. But if you maybe your IB scores, were sent to the wrong place or something like that, if there's anything that's coming in late that we don't have on file, we're monitoring for that all summer. So just go ahead and send it as soon as you can. If you have questions about that, you can always ask your academic advisor during your appointment that's coming up for most of you. If you haven't taken the math placement, or maybe like you took the module for part 1 and 2, but not part 3, even though you qualified, anything that you submit late for the placements as well, we're monitoring all summer, and we can make adjustments to your placement as we get new information. If you are taking that math placement late, you don't need it to be like specially unlocked for you. It stays open all summer. So you should be able to go into Canvas and access that at any point if you haven't yet taken it. Don't see any new questions coming in. hold for a second in case somebody thinks of something, but I
Mhm.
think we covered a lot of ground.
Great.
Yeah, nothing new coming in. Um, any closing words, Stuart?
Um, well, I guess I should welcome all of you to Chicago, the city and the university. I hope you have a wonderful 4 years. If physics can play some part in making it wonderful, we certainly want to. Um, and I guess as a final word, don't hesitate to email me if there's a question on your mind.
All right. Oh, famous last words. Okay. Um, all of the summer webinar series webinars are recorded. And so they all get posted on the same website that you use to actually sign up and register for this webinar. They usually get posted within a day or so. It's pretty fast turnaround. So you can refer back to that. You just want to scroll all the way to the bottom of the page. So the top part is where you sign up for upcoming webinars, but the bottom will have all of those recordings.
Oh, I see a question about Math 161 and Physics 141. If I if you get placed in the Math 161 and if you get placed in the Physics 141 and you have an interest in those two topics, maybe an interest in majoring in them, take them both. Um, Many students, probably most students who get placed in honors physics get honors math placement or higher, and vice versa. If you have placement, it won't be a stretch to take that course. So I would take honors physics and honors math if that is if you have the opportunity. It is. I will tell you what is a little bit tricky though. If you get placed in, and this is me speaking as myself, not I don't represent the college or the physics department, although let's say I do represent the physics department. The reputation of math IBL is that it's very time consuming. And so I think taking honors calculus 161 and honors physics 141, if you have placement for both, I would do it. I would do it. I would take 3 or 4 courses that quarter, depending on what you want to do and what your advisor suggests. But if you take Math 161 IBL, keep in mind that the workload of Math 161 IBL is heavier than just plain Math 161, in which case Math 161 IBL and Physics 141, if you do that, 4 courses that quarter may be a little hard. You might want to do 3. Although I would also say starting with 4 courses is fine. You might want to drop one of them. And it's not that Physics 141 or Math 161 are so time consuming. It is because Math 161 IBL is particularly time consuming. People who have taken Math 161 IBL have told me they really like it, but they also tell me it's a lot of time. Now, here's the thing. If you don't take honors physics, say because you're worried that the math is going to be so intense, well, what would you take for physics? You could wait a year on physics, although that would be a pity, I think, especially if you're thinking of a physics major as well. You could take physics 130s instead of physics 140s, but I wouldn't do that either because if you get 141 placement, I worry you'd be bored by 131. And so what students will often do is they'll enroll in Math 161 and physics 141 because I got placement for both. And then based on how the workload feels, you might then, if you'd like to stay in honors physics and honors math, but the workload seems too much, you could maybe go down to 3 courses instead of 4. The reason I say this is because um, I think dropping down from 140 physics 141 to 131 is I would much rather see if you're thinking of a physics major, it would be a pity to pass up the opportunity of taking physics 141. And with math, same sort of thing. Math will say to you that if you're interested in math, taking math 161 or math 161 IBL is a really great opportunity. Um, so I would say keep in mind that you do have the option of 3 or 4 courses, and yeah, that's what I would say. I don't know, Carrie, if the college would make a similar statement, but I certainly if you're thinking of majoring in physics or math, or thinking of majoring in physics and math, taking those honors courses will mean that you are not having to choose which of those 2 possibilities. You're keeping them both in play. It's not that you couldn't be a physics major if you drop down to physics 131, but it means you're not already reducing the quality of your first year physics experience.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's sound advice. Typically, if you're in 300, then you're likely the third class is going to be your humanities course in almost all cases. But yeah, I think that's sound advice, Stuart. And they just started their academic advising appointments, and they can also be, debating this with their advisor and talking through pros and cons more when they have those meetings. So.
Yes.
All right, there's one more question here maybe that you could fit in before we wrap up. Could you talk a bit about research opportunities for students that are going into physics?
Yes.
Anything there?
So presumably you came to the University of Chicago because you want to get a liberal arts education, but you also want to have the kind of research opportunities that you may not get at a liberal arts college, but you'll get at a research university. So you want to take advantage of the fact that this is that the college is embedded in a research university, and research is one of the great things that we offer here. It doesn't matter what your major is. History, political science, physics, research is, and the opportunity to research is great. Research is extracurricular, at least in terms of physics, it's extracurricular. If you want to do research or you want to do lacrosse, same sort of thing. Do you have time for it? It will depend in part on how time consuming your classes are. And so when a student asks, how soon can I get involved in research? I always say, when will you have time for it? For many students, the first year of college requires a lot of adjusting. A lot of time management skills are still being developed. But if you feel that with your classes, you are in good shape and you have more time to do other stuff, uh, definitely explore research opportunities. The way undergraduates explore research opportunities is the same way graduate students here explore research opportunities. You look at what is going on within the department. You go online and get more information you could possibly consume about what the various professors are working on. Make a short list of professors who are doing things that sound cool and fun. You'd like to get involved because you'd like to check it out more. And then go talk to the professor. Go talk to the professor. Um, we want to have majors take part in research. We can't say to our majors, we want you to get involved in research unless we back it up by inviting you into our labs. So talk to professors, find out about what they're doing. They'll find out about what you're looking for. Um, During the academic year, there is no pressure to put in X number of hours a week. They can't, professors typically don't pay you during the academic year, but at the same time, they can't require that you put in a certain number of hours a week. Like any extracurricular activity, it's you you put in the time that you have with the understanding that your courses come first. But my point there being, it's very it's informal. Research during the academic year is extracurricular. It involves talking to a professor, and if the professor has something that you might be able to get involved in, they'll help you get involved in it. Um, Low pressure. Uh, I think I think research, getting involved in research should be fun, and so we don't want to make it seem like it's anything that is gonna. It's it's not you're not signing a contract that in which you give away your firstborn. You're just doing an extracurricular activity because you think it might be fun. Most students find research to be even more fun than problem sets, if you can believe it. First year students, well, when do students get involved in research? More physics majors get involved in research second year or later than get involved in research in their first year, in large part because they just have more time. First year is busy with all the stuff that first year entails. But having said that, you can get involved in research in your first year as well, but you have to be willing to talk to a professor.
All right. Thanks, Stuart.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks a lot, Carrie. And good luck, everybody.
Good luck.